It should be about the same length. I think I added maybe a few lines here and there, but nothing, so we should be looking at about 60 minutes to read the thing or less.
Okay. Give us a background. First of all, are there more people coming? Or
no, it's just you guys. Yeah, it's just,
okay.
Yeah, I really just had, just because it's not as, there's not as many characters that are kind of in the scene at the same time. It's kind of one guy in his journey, so I didn't need as many readers.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it's just kind of like a 60-minute thing. And where I'm at in the process is not, I don't feel as firm in this as a finished script as I did, say, at the end of Dark Ritual. Because it's just kind of a different animal. This is based on the Pilgrim's Progress.
Right.
And
so at 60 minutes, it's obviously not the whole book.
No. This is just the first chapter. What I'm creating here is a series of 60-minute chapters or episodes that will eventually complete the entire work, or at least the entire work as it follows Christian's journey. Christiana, which is kind of like the second half or whatever that he wrote. I don't know how many years later or how much later, but that's not the part. It's not the most well-known part either. The main, when people think of Pilgrim's Progress, they think of Christian's journey. Yeah. So that's the only thing I'm going to be doing here, and this is just like the first. I don't know how many pages, but it's not a whole lot. It'll take us about 60 minutes to read this. It'd take you much less to read the original work, because I'm adding stuff and let's see. Let me give you number one. So the reason I wanted you guys specifically to be here is Randy, just your background as an actor, as a critic of art and stuff, and understanding story and some of those basic concepts and stuff like that. And just kind of, seeing how it reads as a script. I want to get kind of your reactions after we're all done. And then you, just because of your love of writing and specifically fantasy, speculative fiction, and then also your credit as a theologian. So in terms of like the approach I've taken to this, if you're familiar with the Pilgrim's Progress, which you said in your email, you are fairly familiar with it, or?
Yeah, I once was. I was just trying to remember reading through it for a while. I carried it around with me in Russia.
Okay.
Just sit there and read it.
Okay.
Through it, yeah, on the underground.
It's not meant to be kind of like, purists will not enjoy this. Purists of the original will not enjoy this. I think purists should, I think the original Pilgrim's Progress in today's context is something that should be read and studied and appreciated more on a clinical basis. I think for the average Joe, it's not going to be fun to read. It's going to be, even I would say some of the more modernized language versions, it's really heavy-handed allegory. People's names are worldly wise man and goodwill and stuff like that.
Stuck in the slow despond.
Yeah. So there's some stuff that I just kind of wanted to filter out, and so this still doesn't quite operate as like a straight up fantasy adventure. It's not allegory. I wouldn't say it's allegory the way it's functioning now, but it is heavily symbolic. All right, so we'll just kind of see what happens here. We'll read this introduction, and then I'll play the theme music for you. It's fun. All right, so we fade in on a fireplace crackling, and here's someone sitting in a wooden chair. They open a large book and begin to read. This will be hopefully kind of a slightly older gentleman that sounds articulate but not snobby. And this is actually taken from the original Pilgrim's Progress. As I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place where was a den. And I laid me down to sleep in that place. And I laid me down in that place to sleep. And as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and behold, I saw a man clothed with rags, standing in a certain place, with his face from his own house, a book in his hand, and a great burden upon his back. And at this point, the reader begins to fade out. Some soft underscore comes in, and eventually the narrator takes over. I looked and saw him open the book and read therein, and as he read, he wept and trembled. Dreams are kind of a mystery. We don't really know where they come from. We do our best to analyze them and look for meaning, but sometimes they're just dreams, plain and simple. They can start out making sense, but then shift gears so suddenly that we can't find any logic to their path. They can be a distorted reflection of our lives or take us to places far removed from our experience. The vivid ones stay with us. We can even momentarily confuse them with memories. had a dream like that recently. Nothing like reality, more like some medieval fantasy, overrun by magic and monsters. But the things I smelled and touched felt so real. I keep wondering if it was maybe more than a dream, if some part of it was real. And then this is a theme I found. It's kind of real. Spirit Lane Productions presents a reimagining of the classic tale by John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. It has that questing. I have been studying an ancient tome recently that I believe holds the answers to our questions about the glyphs. Those answers and many more. Some of you may be familiar with the Veritas Chronicles. Yes, I know you have to think back quite a while to your myths and literature studies. Who can tell me what they remember of the Chronicles? Sithin.
The Veritas Chronicles collects a series of works by different authors detailing the history and philosophy of the time before magic. And yet the Chronicles refer to events that could only have existed with the aid of magic. Therefore, the Chronicles have been determined to be inaccurate in their account of history and are classified as mythical literature.
Very good. A faithful reflection of the Order's opinion of the Chronicles. However, I have taken to examining the Veritas Chronicles more closely, and I have concluded that they may very well be a more accurate historical account than we have ever given them credit for.
But how can that be possible? Magic was only discovered 500 years ago. And until 100 years ago, its use was limited and rare. Stories in the Veritas Chronicles are fantastic, even by modern standards of magic use.
Does that make them impossible?
Close enough. At the very least, those stories are completely irrational. Supernatural events didn't take place before the time of magic. To believe that they did is akin to saying fairy tales are real.
That's an oversimplification, isn't it? We can trace most fairy tales to authors who made no claim that their creations were real. The Veritas Chronicles prove faithful in their historical accounts when compared with archaeology and other historical texts. Just because we discovered the ability to use magic recently does not mean it was never employed in the ancient past.
Yes, but modern magic is something we can study and understand. We've learned to harness its energies and quantifiable formulas and rituals. The wild magic described in the Chronicles has no explanation for its workings. The Chronicles only claim that it originates from some antiquated concept of the absolute.
Sounds like an explanation to me. But maybe you refuse to acknowledge the probability of anything you cannot systematically and exhaustively understand yourself. I take it you don't believe that the absolute exists.
The Church has been shown to be wrong in the past.
I didn't ask if you believed in the Church. She has proven valuable, but also very flawed, even corrupted in some sectors. What I asked is if you believe the absolute exists.
Hard to say. I mean, everything must come from something.
True. And that something must be without beginning or cause. Otherwise, we would have to ask what caused it. It must also have intelligence and will. If this something, this original cause, brought about the universe not by choice, but by some natural consequence of its existence, and if it has existed for an infinite amount of time, it would have brought about the universe by natural consequence an infinite amount of time ago. And our universe would likewise be without beginning. Yet, we know our universe has a beginning. For finite reality to exist, there must be an infinite cause with the will to choose, not some impersonal force or natural law. Everywhere we look, in every natural law we discover and label, there is order instead of chaos. I think we must ask the question, why?
If the absolute does exist, he doesn't seem to be very interested in us.
No? What if the absolute took great interest in us? What if he spent hundreds of years speaking to us through our own people, giving us writings that were supernaturally guided by his will?